Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. These words reveal more than most of us are willing to admit. Imagine for a moment the weight of living a life where your choices, your reactions, even your relationships are being quietly shaped by something you cannot see, a hidden force deep within you. That kind of control is not obvious. It doesn't scream for your attention, but it pulls the strings of your existence like a shadow guiding every step you take. True freedom, as Jung understood, does not come from escaping responsibilities, collecting achievements, or chasing external validation. It comes from within, from the courage to face the parts of yourself you've buried, denied, or labeled too dark to acknowledge. We live in a world that sells freedom as comfort, distraction, and independence from others, but Jung's psychology cuts deeper. He reminds us that what really keeps us in chains is not the outside world, but the unexamined corners of our own minds. That is the dark secret, the shadow, that quietly holds us back from becoming whole. And this is exactly what Carl Jung believed about freedom, identity, and the hidden forces that shape our lives. Today, we're going to explore that secret together and uncover how confronting it may be the only path to true liberation. So if this message speaks to you, if you're ready to go beyond surface-level advice and dive into ideas that truly transform the way you see yourself, then join me by subscribing, because this isn't just a channel, it's a journey we're taking together. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow as one of the most powerful yet most misunderstood forces within the human psyche. But what exactly is this shadow? It is not a ghostly presence outside of us, nor some abstract theory floating in the air. It is the hidden side of your own personality, the side you would rather not admit exists. It's the bundle of thoughts you push away, the emotions you silence, the desires you bury, and the flaws you deny. It is made up of your unspoken fears, your suppressed anger, your jealousy, your shame, and even the secret dreams you're too afraid to pursue. The shadow holds everything you've been told is unacceptable, everything society labels as weak, wrong, or dangerous, and because of that, most people spend their lives pretending it isn't there. We wear masks to appear confident, successful, or good. But beneath those masks, the shadow waits. The danger, as Jung realized, is not in the existence of this shadow. It's in what happens when we refuse to face it. Because what we deny doesn't disappear. It leaks out in unconscious ways. This is why so many of us end up reacting without knowing why. The man who explodes in anger at the smallest insult, not realizing that unacknowledged wounds are steering his temper. The ambitious woman who sabotages her own projects because a deep, hidden fear of failure keeps her from ever risking too much. The person who craves approval endlessly because the shadow of rejection from childhood still whispers, "You're not enough." The shadow shows itself in patterns that repeat, in emotions that feel bigger than the situation, in behaviors that don't quite make sense, even to ourselves. And this is where the real prison lies. We cannot be truly free if invisible strings inside us keep pulling us back into the same cycles. Jung warned that until we make the unconscious conscious, until we have the courage to look at what we've buried, we will continue to call these hidden forces fate. Think about that for a moment. How many times in your life have you said, "That's just the way I am," or "Things always happen this way for me"? That is the shadow at work. Freedom is not about escaping responsibility, nor about breaking rules, nor about doing whatever you want without consequence. Freedom, in Jung's sense, begins when you are no longer blindly driven by what you don't understand about yourself. To ignore the shadow is to remain chained. To face it is to take the first real step toward liberation. And here lies the paradox. The shadow itself is not your enemy. In fact, it carries raw energy and hidden truth that, if integrated, can give you strength, creativity, and authenticity. But until you confront it, it remains the dark secret within you, dictating your choices, shaping your relationships, and limiting your growth without your permission. This is why Jung insisted that the shadow must be acknowledged, because a life lived in denial is not a life lived in freedom, it's a life lived as a puppet of unseen forces. If the shadow is the hidden force that quietly shapes our lives, then the natural question becomes, how do we confront it, and more importantly, how do we begin to free ourselves from its grip? Jung's answer was not to fight the shadow or to destroy it, but to face it with awareness and acceptance. Awareness is always the first step. That means beginning to notice your reactions, especially the ones that feel exaggerated or out of proportion to the moment. When you find yourself angrier than the situation calls for, or paralyzed by a fear that others around you don't seem to share, or consumed by jealousy, resentment, or shame, these are not random emotions. They are signals from the shadow. Instead of brushing them aside, ask yourself, what part of me is being exposed here? What is this emotion pointing to beneath the surface? This shift from blindly reacting to consciously observing already loosens the shadow's grip, because what was unconscious begins to take form in the light of your awareness. But awareness alone is not enough. You must move to acceptance. Most of us spend years trying to deny or repress the parts of ourselves we don't like, telling ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way, or I need to get rid of this. But as Jung so wisely put it, what you resist persists. The shadow does not shrink when ignored. It grows stronger. True courage is not about pretending those darker feelings don't exist. It's about looking them in the eye and saying, yes, this too is part of me. Acceptance does not mean indulgence. It doesn't mean you give in to destructive impulses. It means you stop wasting energy denying that they exist. Once you accept the shadow as part of your human nature, you can begin the deeper work of integration. This is the step that transforms the shadow from a hidden enemy into a source of strength. Integration is the process of taking what you've denied and weaving it into a balanced, conscious version of yourself. For example, someone who has always been terrified of being seen as weak might discover that acknowledging vulnerability allows them to connect more deeply with others. What once felt like a shameful weakness becomes a channel for authentic strength. Or, take the person who struggles with suppressed anger. Instead of letting it explode destructively, they can learn to harness that energy to set boundaries, to stand up for themselves, to fuel determination in moments when courage is needed. The shadow, once integrated, provides raw vitality that can be used creatively, passionately, and constructively. And while this may sound abstract, there are practical steps you can take. One of the most effective tools is journaling. Each day, write honestly about your thoughts, feelings, and reactions, especially the ones you are tempted to hide. Seeing them on paper makes them less intimidating and allows patterns to emerge. Meditation is another powerful practice, not because it erases the shadow, but because it creates the stillness where you can observe it without judgment. And for many, speaking with a trusted friend, mentor, or therapist becomes the mirror they need to see parts of themselves that are difficult to acknowledge alone. The key is not speed, but consistency. The shadow has been forming over the course of your whole life. It will not be integrated in a single moment of insight. But with steady awareness, honest acceptance, and conscious integration, the prison bars it once represented begin to dissolve. This is the paradox. The very darkness you feared contains the seeds of your freedom. Jung believed that wholeness, not perfection, is the goal of human life. Wholeness comes when you stop living in conflict with yourself, when you no longer split your identity into the parts you show the world and the parts you hide. Facing your shadow is not comfortable. It asks for bravery, humility, and patience. But on the other side of that confrontation is the only kind of freedom that truly matters. The freedom to live as your whole self, no longer chained by the unconscious, but guided by a self that has embraced both its light and its darkness. In the end, what Jung revealed to us is something both unsettling and liberating at the same time. The dark secret that keeps you from true freedom is not out there in the world, it is within you, hidden in the shadow you try so hard to ignore. The shadow is not your enemy. It is a part of you that longs to be seen, accepted, and transformed. Jung himself put it simply, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." And that is the challenge he leaves us with. To stop searching for freedom in external escapes and instead to turn inward, toward the very places we fear the most. Because if you truly want freedom, you cannot keep running from yourself. You must face what you've buried, acknowledge the parts you've denied, and learn to integrate the darkness into the fullness of who you are. That is where real liberation begins, not in perfection, but in wholeness. So as you step away from this video, take a moment to reflect. What emotions, reactions, or patterns in your own life might be the whispers of your shadow? And more importantly, are you willing to listen to them, to bring them into the light? If you are, then you've already taken the first step toward becoming not just free, but truly awake.